Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another live spoiler discussion of Daredevil Born Again. Today, we're talking about the third episode of the first season, and I have Nicholas with me. Nick, how are you, my friend?
I'm good, buddy. How are you? Gotta
I'm,
keep up appearances.
anytime I'm doing an internet show with you and I don't have to think about the horrors of life, I'm doing fine. So, thank you for being here, as always.
Daredevil
Uh,
helps with that
Daredevil always helps with that.
too.
And man, 7 years was feeling kind of down. And then Daredevil came back, and suddenly we're back. We're so back.
The mental health wonders that Matthew Murdock does for me, yet can't do for himself.
Yeah, seeing that man in pain brings me out of my pain.
You're thinking, it could always be worse.
Yes, always, every time. But guys, today we're going to be discussing full spoilers for episode 3, season 1 of Daredevil Born Again, and this is something that really kind of ends on a really fun cliffhanger for everybody watching along. You and I were lucky enough to have seen the full season, and so we were fortunate enough to be able to click next on an episode after this. But I can't imagine, like, if I wasn't fortunate enough to have that opportunity with you and have to wait. Like, I wouldn't be able to sleep tonight. Like, I'd be looking up at my ceiling, like, but what's going to go down from this? What's going to happen? So, let's just kind of start talking about the episode. First off, as we know, White Tiger is on trial for allegedly murdering a New York City police officer, which we know from the previous episode is not the case. And the episode kind of starts with Matt, Cherry, and Kirsten kind of talking about how at the very end of the last episode, they found the key witness that was on the platform, but the cops tried to kill them, and Matt had to unfortunately whoop their ass, and then they were able to save the witness, but now they need him in the courtroom to testify that he was there, and he saw Hector, and that they didn't say that they were cops, and that he did not kill that police officer. So, through some cool editing, they figure out how to get him into the courtroom without the cops killing them. And he makes it into the courtroom. Huge sigh of relief. However, anyone who knows how runtimes work, it was far too early in the episode for everything to go smoothly. So he gets on the stand. He sees what looks like dozens of New York City police officers in there. And he lies on the stand and says, "Nope, I was at home all night. I wasn't there. I don't know what you're talking about, Mr. Murdoch." And their star witness, like, their case is pretty much dead from that point. Another great scene that happened here is the cop that Matt beat the shit out of the night before is on the stand, and Matt starts off his questioning of him by saying, "You have a black eye, are you all right?" And the guy goes, "I'm fine." And he goes, they say in boxing there's a saying where they say the cure to a black eye is fast hands. And the lawyer's like, "Jesus, come on."
No, Matt as a lawyer it's always so fun when he starts to get like really pissy with people.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't like you, and I'm gonna let you know. But I mean, I thought that the editing, the whole sequence of getting the key witness, Nikki, I think his name
Yep,
was,
Nikki Torres.
um, to the stand. It was very reminiscent of like toward the end of season 3, the whole like getting Nadim to the courtroom.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, that was much more of an action scene, but I thought that's sort of what it reminded me of. Maybe that was some inspiration in that regard, just how well that scene played out. But from a suspense and a thrill standpoint, I thought that they nailed that.
No,
And I like, is it Cherry, the PI?
yes.
I really like him.
I really like him as well. And,
Yeah.
I feel like in another life, if they would have made this originally connected to the Netflix show before they actually did it through
Yeah.
the overhaul, I feel like there's an alternate universe where he's Brett Mahoney. But regardless,
Mhm.
I still love the fact that I still love the character. I don't want this character to go anywhere. I just wanted it on the record that I miss Brett. But moving forward,
Yeah.
after their star witness crashes, they kind of have a come to Jesus meeting of like, we have to just put him on the stand and let his character speak for himself. It's our only option, but Matt has a secret agenda. They get onto the stand. Hector Ayala's talking about how Nikki Torres was there and he didn't kill those officers. And Matt pulls a big fuck you to the court by outing him as the White Tiger in the courtroom, saying that he is a hero on the record of many cops. Some of the cops are even in that courtroom saying that they love the White Tiger. And the judge is furious because we just saw in the last episode Matt specifically blocked information from the prosecution from introducing things of him as the White Tiger. The other lawyer is also pissed at him. And by the way, the other lawyer gives a great performance in the episode. And
Hochberg is a great
yeah,
foil for Matt Murdock. I like the idea too, because a lot of the courtroom scenes that we've seen, in the Netflix show, right? It was always kind of just like a day player. We need lawyer 1, 2, and 3 on the stand here.
Yeah.
So I think actually having a foil in that regard, it just works very well.
No, I agree completely, especially when they get to the closing arguments, which, after they reveal the White Tiger, they bring in witnesses to talk about how White Tiger saved them, even some police officers. And Matt gives a really great closing argument where he says he did this without putting on the mystical amulet that gives him strength. He went in there because it was the right thing to do. I still love it. I will never get over that. He did it because it was the right thing to do, and that even cops talk about how much the White Tigers helped them out. And, why would he hurt a police officer? But I will say, they do a great job in suspense of making you believe they might lose the case because of Hawkburn's closing argument, where he says, every day I get up, I go to church, I go visit my mother, I do this. Does that make me a good person? Or does that mean I'm still capable of horrible things? I'm not going to sit here and suggest that the character witness has lied to you and saying that he's a bad person, but that doesn't mean he's not capable of evil because he did a horrible thing that night by killing that officer. And I was like, damn, that was a good closing argument. And
describing in detail what happens to the body when a subway train goes over it. I really thought that, obviously we see how it all plays out, but I really thought at that point in the episode, I thought we are going to go into like a what's it called, like a hung jury, or something, where it was going to then get more of that behind the scenes courtrooms. Obviously, that's not the case, but that the writing was so strong and the back and forth was so good that's where I thought that the story was heading. I was like, oh, there's no way he gets off on this.
Yeah, no, it was. It did make you believe it, and I also love that when they were in the judge's chambers, the judge says, like, well, I declare a mistrial, but it's out there already. There's nothing to really stop. And something that the judge also pointed out to Matt was, you did this. And Matt goes, I know, it's open season on my client. And he says it kind of like, we'll deal with that. Little does he know. But, Hector's found not guilty. And who's watching this not guilty verdict and fucking pissed about it? Wilson Fisk. Mayor Fisk sees that Matt gets Hector off. Not how I meant it, but you know what I mean. And he is obviously very upset and calls BB Urich back into the office to give an interview. And I love how his main advisor's like, sir, we have contacts at the Times. And he's just like, no, I want to talk to BB. I want to talk to the niece of the man I murdered now. And BB comes in, he does the whole thing, and I like what he said also when he's like, juries can get it wrong, trust me, I'm one to talk. But speaking to Fisk's kind of subplot, we see more activity happening at that pier with that double homicide that wasn't set up at all by anyone that we are familiar with. You have him and Vanessa arguing right before counseling, where he says, like, don't get into a place where I can't trust you, to Vanessa. And Vanessa's just kind of being Queenpin, the bad bitch of the moment, being like, I'm going to run the business how I need to run it. Like, you need to kind of, we're criminals. Like, just let us be criminals. Like, I don't know what's going on with you. It's kind of her whole thing. And after that, of course, we got to get to the end of the episode where, earlier in the episode, Hector talked about this beach that he loved going to with this frog. I believe it was a frog who made a very specific whistle, and he liked hearing it, and he can't wait to go back. And what happens at the end of the episode? He can't help himself, because it's who he is. He puts on the White Tiger outfit, he goes out, and gets fucking murdered. Dead. And we don't see the face of the killer, but we do see a very noticeable logo, the iconography of the Punisher skull, as the episode ends, and through the credits you hear that frog that Hector was referring to. I know it sounds like a bird, but I believe it was a frog. Correct me if I'm wrong, anyone in the comments. But it was such a good ending to the episode. Like, I love how it ends. And look, clearly they want some people, they're setting it up just they want some people to think it's Frank. I think anyone with half a brain knows there ain't no fucking way that Frank Castle did that. And, we've seen the Punisher tattoos on the cops in episode 2. We saw a huge one on the neck in this episode, and we also saw a mural with the Punisher logo that said triggered across the top of the skull. Like, we've seen all the different activity suggesting that, these cops are taking up this logo, these dirty cops, very reflective of the world we live in now, which is just, it's so insane and cool that we live in a world where Marvel's actually making a thing where they tackle this. Like, I never thought I'd see this. I've always wanted to see this, and the fact that they're doing it is awesome. And I won't say when, how, or why Frank comes into the show, but we know in the trailers he does. And let's just say I believe you watching have a fun little idea that he's not going to love the fact that his logo's being used like that. So what were your thoughts on the end of the episode, and how do you think Marvel was hoping to set up the story, and do you think the conversation, I know the episode just ended, but do you think the conversation's going to go in the right direction that they want it to go in as to what we can expect in the next episodes?
I think the ending specifically did a great job of really setting expectations for what the show is, that they're not afraid to pull those kinds of move, right, and actually just kill a character that we've been following for several episodes. That being said, I was very sad. Obviously, the actor that plays White Tiger passed away a few years ago. But I thought that he did a phenomenal job as the character, and I thought the character was very complex, very interesting, and again, going back to like it's the right thing to do. He didn't even have his mystical amulet and everything like that, and him just seeing this void in his neighborhood that he needs, and looking to Daredevil for that inspiration of, well, like, Daredevil's gone, can I be something for my neighborhood? And I thought it was a great character, and I would have loved to see more of him. Maybe that's something in some flashbacks, maybe down the line we can see, or I just thought he did a phenomenal job with it. But I think it was a great way to propel your plot forward, as well as a way to again, like I said, sort of set expectations, subvert expectations. I don't,
Yep.
just a way to shock viewers, to show like, oh, these are the stakes. This is real, and from a filmmaking standpoint, right? Because the way they intercut everything with Fisk's monologue about vigilantes and everything, it's done in such a way. If you listen to what Fisk is saying, it's very unrelated to all of that, but filming it in that sort of Godfather style of like, oh, it just sets this tone that, like, does Fisk have something to do with this? What is Fisk's, goals? And I thought that was just great filmmaking, personally.
No, it was very well done.
TV making, not filmmaking.
It's filmmaking, okay?
If we're talking Daredevil, we're talking film.
Absolutely. No, everything you said is correct, and I also, I think it's important to point out, in the comics, the main White Tiger is actually his niece, who we get a brief appearance of in this episode. And however, in the comic, he lived like a full life as White Tiger, retired, and then kind of the mantle was kind of passed on to her. And so what I think, having the comic history and just the, vast world of Marvel from the perspective of new storytellers coming in, is if they want to have this big thing happen at the end of the episode, not only does it work narratively, where, as you said, it subverts expectations to what we think we're going to get, but for fans watching, it also has a new origin for, like, now I could totally see the niece being really pissed off by what happened and the mantle being taken up that way. Like, it's not like how we got it in the comic, but it's not unlike the passing of the torch, just in a new way. So as a screenwriter and, the writers of the episode, you have this really fun opportunity to be like, let's really flip the story on its head, but also honor what diehard fans are like watching for. So, and again, this is just assuming that they're going to eventually go down the path of the niece, because we've seen her, in this episode. But, I won't speak as to if we see her in future episodes, but that's not unheard of. The fact that, Marvel's very meticulous with what they say and what they show in their media. And the fact that she was mentioned, the fact that she was seen, is not on accident. Like it never would be. And
But it could just be a thing that they're introducing. Like, I mean, look at uh oh my god, I'm blanking on the name from Falcon and Winter Soldier. Um Young Avengers. The kid.
Elijah Bradley.
Elijah Bradley, right? They introduce and set him up, and then, Brave New World comes around, which is Falcon and Winter Soldier 2, and
Mhm.
he's not a sight nor a mention.
Not yet. It took 16 years for the leader. So, we're accustomed to waiting sometimes.
Marvel's not afraid to wait.
We know that for sure. For damn sure. But and what's really sad too about the actor passing away is like he did such a good job, and it's a shame that even if they go the route of like having the niece be the new White Tiger, the flashbacks with that actor are now off the table, which is just really unfortunate because I thought he did such a good job. And
Kamar de los Reyes.
Yes. And
just wanted to make sure we had the name there.
Of course. And something that I remember thinking a while ago, just because we're chronically online when it comes to like the nerdy stuff when they're making it. I remember when they did the creative overhaul, because he passed away like not long after he wrapped. Like I think it was just a couple months after he wrapped on Daredevil is when he passed away. Mm-hmm. And when they did the creative overhaul, there was a ton of stuff that were breaking, like Karen's back, Foggy's back, all this is back, blah, 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 blah. We're going to rework a lot of the footage, and we're going to do all this, and we're going to bring some of the actors back who were in the show, and reshoot a bunch of stuff, but there was zero mention of, we have to recast this part. And so it kind of made me think, like, he must not be in it very long, and which makes you think, like, either it's just an episode thing, or the character dies, or something happens. And so, like, I had an inkling of, like, this probably is not going to end well for him, especially as soon as he's outed in the courtroom by Matt. You're like, well, he better hide. Like, that's very, he's got to be careful.
Well, because also, right, so if you look at it, obviously they did the creative overhaul, which they reshot the entire pilot, I believe. Mm-hmm. And I think he's just on, like, the TV screen.
Yeah.
Right? And then you really kind of see him in 2 and then into 3. So he was really just essentially in the first 2 episodes from the get-go. It just happened to feel better in the 3, which I think was great. Like, even just the reference in episode 1 played a great part of just world building of like, there's vigilantes out here. Mm-hmm. So I think it was for the better that we got even just another scene or 2 out of it. But I mean, it's also very silly he passed away. So did there was an actor from Moon Knight as well, right?
Yes. He played one of the mercenaries in Moon Knight.
Gaspard Ulliel, but he was supposed to be like a bigger, like he was a comic character that was like in the comics. It's a similar thing, right? Season 2 of Moon Knight, if that ever happens, right? Do you recast or is that just sort of off the table at this point?
Did that character survive Moon Knight season 1?
I think it was kind of left ambiguous. They get into the jousting fight, and then I think he gets like stabbed and then rides off into the fog.
Right. You're right. That's right.
And I think that's it. So it's kind of, but I think that was essentially setting up. Like, I think that was supposed to be like his character's like origin, and then that would come back later as the villain that we know him as, which I'm blanking on the name right now.
Yeah, same. Going back to something in this episode that I wanted to talk about was the fact that Matt is being kind of very hypocritical at the current moment because when he outs him as the White Tiger, he kind of gives him a speech where he says, like, you can never put the suit back on. And then Hector gives him the return speech, just kind of being like, this is who I am. Like, I'm not going to not wear the suit. Like, he pretty much tells Matt, like, I'm not going to do that. And, they do a great job of Matt kind of reflecting on himself. Like in the beginning of the episode, he gives a great speech where I think it was in the same moment where he says, listen, if you do give it up, I think you'd be surprised by how much you don't miss it. But Matt's clearly lying to himself. Like when he says that, like you can see it in his face that even he doesn't mean that. It's like almost he kind of knew that it wasn't going to happen. And while I was prepping this show, I was watching other live streams, and someone brought up on Phase Hero, a really great point. Jamie on Phase Hero brought up that, like, Matt probably should have in that moment told him that he was Daredevil as like a an exchange of like, hey, I kind of put you out there, so like as a way to trust me, like here's this information, and that it would have been interesting to see it. It doesn't make the episode any better or worse that he didn't. But I when I heard that, I was like, oh, that would have been like an interesting like point to dive into with the episode.
It would have been, but to me, then I feel like there's a way to interpret the ending of the episode of maybe Hector going out more because he knows that information. Where he's like, oh, like if Matt Murdock can live this double life and put it away, maybe I could just do it a little bit longer and all that. And then you have that storyline then of Matt feeling guilty. But I think for me, it works better for the character that it was his own sort of like, this is who he is, and he's just set in his ways.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I mean, that's a really good point. Before we kind of wrap things up here, was there anything in this particular episode that you enjoyed, didn't enjoy, kind of putting yourself in the mindset of just the 3 episodes that we've had so far, comparing it to the Netflix show, like, how are you feeling about it? Do you think, if you hadn't seen the whole season already, do you think you'd be something that at this point in the show you'd be happy with or satisfied with as a fan? Like, how are you feeling about it?
No, yeah, absolutely. Especially at the ending of this episode with the cliffhanger. Obviously, you and I had the benefit of clicking next, but that would have gotten me actively excited and hyped for the following week.
Oh yeah.
It does feel different than the Netflix show. It's kind of like a same different scenario. I think there's a lot of strong elements, especially as the rest of the season progresses. But from what we've seen now, I could see myself maybe having just that little like, oh, this is different, and I really like the Netflix show. But I think that the supporting cast that they bring in, obviously, because Foggy gets killed and Karen's in San Francisco, so I think the new partner, the PI, I think that they have a very strong supporting cast, especially with like on Fisk's end as well, sort of his whole little team, and Vanessa's just knocking it out of the park. I feel bad that the actors filmed all these scenes, and then they reshot it. But like to me, she just owns the role, so it's just essential to have her there.
And like, sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, but that I think that it balances well, right? Like that tension of getting the guy to the courtroom and Matt just never being able to win, right? Just then he thinks he has a win, right? Like, oh, we got him into the courtroom for him to lie on the stand. That is sort of the heart and true of the Daredevil storylines as they progress. And I think as a courtroom drama as well, which this episode primarily was, I think that the writing is very strong there, similar to the Netflix show. And I may even say, just based off this episode, some sequences may be even more improved than the Netflix show, because I think that the Netflix show has strong courtroom scenes, but I think there's an argument to be made that it could have been stronger, maybe a little more like dynamic. Like the courtroom scene of him in Defenders, I thought was great. The one shot by, whatchamacallit?
S.J. Clarkson in Defenders.
S.J. Clarkson from Adam Webb. I thought that was a great scene that had a lot of visual dynamicism to it. So I think that the show did a great job of catching that.
No, of course. I think that the new show is doing a great job with the legal part of it, and that goes to show that they did hire attorneys to be consultants on the show. I personally did love the legal stuff in the Netflix show, particularly season 1. Like, yeah, the Punisher stuff in the courtroom was great, but it was kind of the only courtroom stuff you got in season 2. In season 1, I was a big fan of in the 3rd episode of that show, when at the bowling alley, when the guy murders the guy in the bowling alley and Wesley hires Nelson and Murdoch to defend him. I really liked that whole dynamic and how that played out, and how Matt could hear the heartbeats of the jury and know that one of them was compromised. Like, I really like that stuff too. It didn't get into the actual legal part of it, which I will give you. I think that's what this show's doing really well. But I did enjoy those scenes. But I will agree with you. The best one was from Defenders. Defenders had the best Matt Murdock court moment, and the way it was shot was excellent. S.J. Clarkson's a good director. Don't let Madam Webb fool you. There was a lot of corporate fuckery that happened there. I also want to shout out the live chat. We have Somar in the chat saying, "What up, Doe? What's poppin', man? How's it going? Thanks for joining us."
I found some great. I was just scrolling through Twitter just now, looking for some reactions. I found some great ones. I wanted
Hmm.
to. I'm
Yeah,
not
yeah.
gonna share screen, but we got
Hmm.
someone quoted the Officer Powell. Good morning. I'm told you have a black eye. I hope everything's okay. And they have the gif of Shrek when he gets stabbed in Shrek 3 when he does like the um
That's pretty
what's it
good.
called? We have cops IRL having a Punisher tattoo, watching Daredevil Born Again, and then it's the GIF from Euphoria that says, "Wait, is this
It's
fucking
fucking
play
play
about us?"
about us.
Uh, no, there's just
That's great.
so many good ones. Matt Murdock, my sassy king. Uh, oh man, Punisher is gonna have some words to say to these cops.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
No, there was some great ones.
So
A lot of what the fuck is what I've been seeing.
yeah, yeah, and
Many
which
tweets.
listen, that's exactly what you want at this point in the show, right? Like you want people to really yearn for that next episode, and I think they did a great job. Going quickly back to Vanessa, which is something you were talking about earlier.
Hmm.
When you talk about great arcs in the MCU, by the way, I love that I can say MCU referring to Netflix and people aren't in the comments like, well, actually, haha, I always fucking knew, okay? But when you talk about great arcs, Vanessa's arc is pretty fucking awesome. Like from the art gallery in season 1, just like being this woman that Wilson Fisk is infatuated with, to having to fuck off to a new country and coming back at the end of season 3, and then in season 3 she orders the hit on Nadim, which is like fully queen pinning her, like to like bring her in, and then she starts this show by running shit. You're like, damn, Vanessa, like the whole arc is great. It's a great arc with Vanessa. I'm loving it.
It's a fantastic arc, and it works so well as well for Fisk's character, right? As
Hmm.
well, because he's someone who's used to being in charge and control of everything, and seeing that, but also he is infatuated with Vanessa, right? Like cardinal rule number one of engaging with Wilson Fisk: do not fuck with Vanessa.
Hmm.
And I think you start to see that balance of right now he's mayor of New York and still trying to protect her as she's running shit in the criminal underground, but still trying to keep his hands clean in, that sort of double life, if you will. I think it works great for the characters in every sense of the word.
And to that point, a little bit about him, like whether he's lying to himself or not, whether you think he's lying or not, I actually believe that when he said like he's actually trying to be a new person, he means that. We obviously just anyone with a brain watching knows like it's probably not going to stay that way. But
Mhm.
I honestly like that they're kind of following up on Echo. As someone who doesn't hate Echo, which is one of the nicest things you'll hear about it on the internet, but as someone who like actually like I've enjoyed most of Echo, the ending, while it was done kind of cheesy, but the idea of like Echo tried to like heal his trauma,
Mhm.
and it like really psychologically messed with him, and then it leads into him running for mayor. They're still kind of following up from that. Now, will it work? I think you know the answer, but it's just one of those things that like it's something that I thought was just going to be outright ignored, and it wasn't.
Mhm.
And I'm a fan of that, especially considering then when they made Echo, they gave it like the Marvel Spotlight banner, which was just odd. I think the only other project getting it in the future is Wonder Man, and it's just like I'm not a fan of the banner. Like just
What
say
is the purpose of Spotlight?
the purpose of Spotlight was like, oh, you don't have to watch. Literally, the purpose of Spotlight was like, you don't have to watch this if you're following just the main arc continuity, like for like the Avengers movies,
That
basically,
just sounds like special presentation.
essentially. But it's like well, what sucked is it from a confidence standpoint, it was almost like, oh, do you think the show's bad? Like you're basically just telling people like, hey, you don't have to watch this one, and it's like, what do you
Well,
mean I
could
don't
it
have to
be
watch this one?
was Echo MA?
It was.
Is Wonder Man going to be MA?
I don't think so, but I don't know. I don't know the answer.
That's why I was curious. Maybe it was an MA thing, which obviously they're changing with Daredevil Born Again, right? Not being
Mhm.
MA. I think that I think it was just part of that, like the growing pains transformation period of like who's in charge, who's making the creative
Yeah.
decisions,
Then
what
that
output
was also
numbers.
at the time when a lot of the power dynamics were changing. Like we went back to Iger, people got their power back. And by the way, I love how MA this show is. I am a big fan. This may not mean anything to most people. I'm a big fan of F-bombs in the MCU. Big fan. I love hearing them. And you may or may not
Hasn't
get
there
some.
been only one?
I think there's been 2. But you may or may not. You may or may not get more of them later that are pretty epic. But you have to keep watching to see. But yeah, I'm a big fan of that. And yeah. Any final thoughts on episode 3 before we wrap it up?
No, I mean, I think the show is solid. Honestly, I mean, obviously we've seen it, right? But I think at this point, I think that there's exciting things to come, and especially with the cliffhanger of episode 3, I think that that's something that's going to get a lot of people excited for episode 4, and I'm really interested to see as the show progresses what sort of growth it has, week by week in the audience, if it does manage to build up one, like on a larger scale. Is it continually attracting and growing just from word of mouth to maybe people outside of Marvel?
Yeah, I would love for it to grow exponentially each week. That would be amazing. And guys, episode 4 is one of my personal favorites of the season. So I'm really excited to come back next week and talk about episode 4. There's a lot of cool shit to talk about. So be excited for that next week. But guys, thank you so much for joining us. Leave some comments down below if you have any questions, and on next week's stream, we'll answer them. And if you want to watch us live next week, if you put some live chats, some live questions into the comments, we'll happily answer them on the show as we discuss things live. As always, guys, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you on the next one.